Hey everybody, Amanda here and Lena from the
Hi.
Energy Cleanse, and today we have Evan Sanders with us from the Better Man Project. He's a writer, photographer, and a life coach. Thank you so much for your time. We are so excited to get the chance to even speak with you today, so thank you.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. We just wanted to have an amazing conversation with you about energy and how you apply it to your life and just kind of your thoughts overall about it. I think it's important to share your opinion with our group. And yeah, so what do you think the word energy really means to you?
I think energy can kind of really mean a couple of different things, whether that's your personal energy, the energy that you are feeling in terms of just like, how's my life going? What's the mood of my day? What's the mood of this month? What's the mood of this year? But there's also a couple different other types of energy too, which is kind of like the energy of the outside world, the energy of a group of people. Maybe that's us sitting down, and the energy between me and you as a connection. Definitely as a coach, I pick up on that all the time. As an empath as well, I can start actually tapping into other people's emotions.
We're going to ask you about that later.
Yeah.
So that's a really off-topic thing in terms of we might get really down far the rabbit hole there. But
that's okay. We like that.
I think, energy is really, I don't think it's a really well-accepted concept right now in kind of the mainstream. I think if you go out to about 10 people on the street and start talking about energy, they're going to start wondering if you're going to start selling them incense or other type of like tea tree oil or stuff like that. So I really think if you had to whittle it down and get to its grassroots, it's mostly about kind of like you being in tune with yourself, what's going on, the mood of what's going on with your life, and also kind of, if you want to stretch it a little bit farther as you get more advanced, like an area or a group of people.
Right.
So do you feel like you can feel people's energy when you meet them?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that just comes in tune as you continue to kind of dive into your own practices and be more in tune with your own personal energy. You can start to pick up on things that might not necessarily be yours.
Yeah.
Whether it's positive or negative as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what you said was great, and that's kind of our intention behind talking to different people about this concept, because it's not really widely accepted or used. So I'm so interested in, and I love your definition of it. And there's no like clear, in a box definition. It has different meanings to different people, but I love, hearing your perspective on it. And I think that's how we, work with that word as well.
Yeah. I feel like it's like the vibe you carry. Like if you walk in a room, people are like, damn, I love his vibe. Like I like his energy, just the way he shows up. But like, damn. But then like tomorrow you could be in a crap mood and walk in the door and I'm like, ooh, like I can feel that.
Yeah.
Like, so do you feel like that's what you mean when you say like when you feel people's energy kind of thing?
Yeah, and one aspect, I think it's definitely part of it. I think what you're talking about too is like a body sense. And usually when I'm introducing this idea to people about kind of like how is their body aware of energy, right? Because sometimes we have like the cognitive, we have the heart, and we got our body too, right? The three pieces of us. And so I was like, okay, have you ever been in a room and someone walks into the room and you can't see the door, but they're behind you and you're just like, ugh.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I don't know about that. Like,
it's
your body actually picking up on a different type of vibe.
Yeah.
So you can have that sensation too as well when people walk into a room and you actually enjoy their presence, right? It doesn't have to be just a negative thing. Be like, you can feel that your best friend is there or something like that.
Totally. I think everyone can relate to that. Like when you explain like that, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm down with energy. Like I get it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, have you ever come across a person and you don't know that person at all, but you meet them and you can like get such a great sense about them and you're like, okay, you're definitely going to be my best friend. Like you have a best friend energy.
You have a best friend energy.
Yeah, I got it.
And I like when we met, I'm like instant.
That's the one for me.
Right. Yeah, I think it's interesting when you start talking about intuition as well, because it's really in there, kind of in this sense of what is a body sense. And the easiest way I've known to describe intuition is this knowing without knowing. Like, have you ever made a decision where you're like, oh my God, I'm overthinking this like crazy, and you come up to some decision and you're like, it doesn't kind of feel right, And then you make some snap to decisions where you're like, I don't know why I need to make this choice, but I'm going to make it, and it turns out being the right thing. You can't tell me that you thought through that cognitively for 5 to 10 minutes, creating an action plan and a guide map for the whole thing. It's really an intuitive piece of you, which is it's a lot more depth driven than a cognitive thing.
I think people get scared of that word sometimes, and you're like intuition, whatever. But I find if you just change the word about it, I don't know why there's some fear associated with that, just being like a woo-woo concept. But if you say a gut feeling, to me that's like this. That's the same thing. When people say, I have this gut feeling about this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just like it's interesting how society does kind of get scared of that. Like you were saying, the word energy isn't like widely accepted. I kind of feel the same way about like that intuition.
Well, think about it. Our inner critic, that judge, lives in our head.
Yeah.
Right. Just spewing all of this BS and this negativity all day, and it really is it's a way just to keep you balanced. So like when you start growing, your critic starts growing with you as well. It's just a way to keep you kind of level. Yeah. And so that's kind of where the phrase "for every level, there's another devil" comes from.
Ooh, I've never heard that.
Yeah.
Critic really is just vicious, and it knows exactly what to say to bring you back down to earth.
Yeah.
Even lower. And so, the cognitive side of like, okay, well, I can figure this out scientifically, like A plus B equals C. And unfortunately, it's not the way that kind of life works all the time, which is like, that doesn't always happen.
Nope.
Yeah.
So, the critic is very fast moving, it's very black and white, it's very this equals this, it's very timeline oriented. But when you jump into kind of like a more spiritual side of your life, which is existing like down into your heart, you're not on a timeline anymore.
Right.
Like it's not about, 4 hours have passed by, this should have happened, and things are very colorful instead of being so black and white. So it's like a sense of, I kind of just am walking by faith here.
Right.
And understanding that this is the right way to go, and it's a very different energy. So getting people to slow down and get out of their heads a little bit more and just kind of like relax and like drop down into their heart is really an interesting way of actually having people make some decisions and having access to this as well at the same time.
Yeah. I really love that you said that too, because it's like we feel like when we're in our heads, like we have to push and force and, make stuff happen, but when we're in like that heart center, kind of like you said, it's like 4 hours could pass by, but that could be the most productive 4 hours you had mentally all day. No.
Exactly.
I love that.
I know that so I'm an attorney and I still am in my practice, but after law school, talk about thinking from that and living from that part of your brain, like the rational, logical, problem-solving part of you. I know it took a lot of like unlearning and stepping away from that side, and it took work, and I still struggle with it to be able to tap into that place that is that intuitive, heart-centered place. It was a challenge.
Think about it. It's like I get examples like this all the time. Like, oh my God, he hasn't texted me back in 4 hours. What am I going to do? And it's like, oh, you're all up in your head right now.
Yeah. Ego goes wild.
Take a deep breath and like relax.
You start creating all these crazy stories.
Oh, I've been married to him for 15 years and he doesn't have his phone on him right now. It's just really taking you can get lost up in your head and it's not even rooted really much in actually what's going on in reality. It's just,
it's not sane.
It's not sane, and you're crazy. Yeah, and you give your power away to that moment.
Exactly.
So you said something great about like how your mind can take you, and your mind can take you both places. Your thoughts can be your biggest supporter and really build you up, or they can also like bring you down, like you said, to earth and sometimes even below. So, yeah. So what are like your personal practices, whether they're like daily habits that you have or just ways that you get yourself out of maybe like a low place? Do you have anything like that?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different answers to this question here. One is really about what happens when you get real low, and I'll kind of come back to that. But I think I do a lot of work with my own inner critic. It's like the biggest jerk in the world, and of course, right?
Right.
And everyone's really is. And I think a lot of people don't really have the know-how of, well, how do I actually work with the critic in the first place? And they just let it spew, and there's no kind of like pushback against it. And so a lot of the work that I do personally, a lot of the work that I do with other people is teaching them actually how to work with the inner critic. And some people have different ways of doing it, but one of my favorite techniques is like, you gotta get pretty sassy with it. Like, and I've had examples of sitting with clients and it'll be like, okay, well, what's the sentence or what is it constantly saying to you that is really kind of detrimental to what's going on in your life right now? And they'll be like something, you know, you're worthless, you're not good enough, like anything that you can imagine to bring somebody down, they'll start spewing. And really having a phrase or kind of like a stop phrase to get this thing to shut up is really important. Like, it's not all about just being gentle and kind all the time. Like, sometimes you got to put some power behind it.
I agree with that completely.
I've sat down with people and say, okay, you got to think of the one word that's really gonna stop this thing, and they'll be like, enough. And I'll be like, okay, and I'll play their inner critic, and I'm like, I don't believe you, I'm your inner critic.
Right.
And it's like, okay, like, enough, and they start getting like louder and louder and louder, or more forceful, or they'll say it with some actual conviction, and you're like, oof, I'll get like goosebumps all over my body, because they really mean it.
Yep.
And this is, I think, such an important thing, is like, there's a lot of negativity that's always going to be spewed, and you actually have to be able to get this thing under control and to be able to talk to it, because it's just a scared, wounded thing inside of you that's just trying to tear you apart, because it doesn't want you to keep on growing and keep on going in that direction. And so really being kind of like powerful with it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the right word. I think it's just powerful in whatever way that looks like for you.
So do you have, okay, so say you're going through something and maybe you're going to a new level in your life or your business or maybe in a relationship, and that inner critic gets really loud. Are you like mentally having a conversation back, like pushing back, or are you writing these things? Like how would you personally handle it? I'm curious for me, because this is a great, love this.
Yeah.
Me personally, at times I have, if it's a lighter weight conversation, I just disregard it in terms of like, not push it away, but just be like,
just don't attach to it almost.
Throw it over your shoulder. Like, just, this is garbage. And it is. You can hear something where you're like, it's garbage. But you gotta get it right when it starts.
Yep.
Because let that thing go on a roll. It's just like getting punch after punch after punch after punch, and it's going to wear anybody down. So you got to get it right when it begins. I think another way of me doing it is obviously I'm a writer, and so I love writing. I love creating quotes, and I think just in terms of a perception of how people see kind of what I try to put out there, always has a pretty good vibe to it. But sometimes that good vibe and that light comes from a very, very dark place.
Yeah.
I think this is what I was going to return back to, which is like, well, when you're really like in it, like down, how do you get out of it? And frankly, you have to feel it.
Yes.
I hate this cliche, but you got to feel it to heal it.
Yeah. Big proponents of that. We teach that in our course.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you do, because I think that's like clutch. So good job. But, there are some moments. I had some times over this past year throughout the winter where I was just miserable, and it like lasted for months. And so I think there's some things that are really important. Everybody has wounds. Everybody is dealing with some sort of abandonment or some sort of shame or some sort of betrayal. And the thing that was really a breakthrough for me actually happened in the last session of my coaching course, where I had a guy talking about these wounds that we all go through, this shame or betrayal or abandonment, right? And he said, on the other side of these wounds are 3 other really important things. Honoring your relationships after you've had this abandonment, right?
Sure.
It's really easy to lock up and just push everything out. Or, the sense of commitment right? And what about like honoring yourself and your body after you've been shamed? So it's so easy to kind of like let this awful black cloud just consume you. And I'm not taking anything away from anybody that's in it, because I know exactly what it's like. It happens through cycles all the time. You know, life goes up and life goes down. But you don't have to make it worse for yourself, right? You don't have to bury yourself in alcohol or drugs or food, or, you know, go and hook up with everybody in the world, or because you had this one bad thing part of your life. It's one piece of your life that's bad right now. And I think it's another important kind of shift in your mind, which is, you know, your relationship, like this single relationship in your life deteriorated, but what else is going on in your world? Can you come back to this sense of gratitude of, yeah, this really hurts, like acknowledging my pain, like this really sucks, I'm heartbroken, or I'm, you know, devastated. But this is one area of my life, and I have to continue to honor myself, my commitments, everything else, and it helps you heal faster. It's not that it goes away, but it helps you heal faster.
Yeah, you have to feel things. I love that you brought that up, because I feel like it's very important. And sometimes in this industry, and when we're in this whole self-development space, people think like, oh, I gotta just choose a positive thought. Sometimes you have to be in that negative place. You have to feel through your shit before you can move through it. You can't move over it. You have to move through it. That's when the breakthrough happens. And that's when the quickest way to heal, I feel.
Absolutely. And if you don't go through it, how do you ever know what does it mean to you? And two, how are you going to deal with it in the future? Because it's going to happen again.
Doesn't go
You're going to go through heartbreak again. You're going to go through whatever again. And so if you try to escalate above the pain, or I'm just going to, you hear this all the time, I'm just going to rise above it.
No,
well, now you've created this ladder, essentially, that has no rungs to it. So when life kicks you in the butt again, you go to step back down on a rung, and there's nothing there, so you fall straight back to the bottom.
That's a good analogy.
And so I think, like, just in terms of on a personal level, like, there's a lot, I see this a lot, which is people not acknowledging what they're going through, not asking for support, which is so important, of being like, you know, whether that's your best friend or that's family, or just being like, I'm hurting right now and this is what's going on, and just asking for an ear or whatever you need. But also trying to kind of mask the pain by filling it with something else. And this brings me way back to the beginning of when I started writing. I described my heart as having a soul of Swiss cheese, which is like, it's got holes in it everywhere. And I was like, I try to fill it with all of these different things, whether that's, you know, you date, you break up, and you're like, I'm going to find somebody else right now. But you don't even know what just happened. You haven't even processed that. And that, you can do that indefinitely until you realize that you got this huge hole in you that you've never filled. So it's like, let's be more like a block of like Parmesan or like something else, instead of having all these different holes that we easily fill. Like self-help. You know, here's the Band-Aid. Think a positive thought. Well, I'm sorry, but if you're dealing with chronic depression and anxiety, and you really honestly are in a dark place, like, that positive thought is just going to be eaten alive by your critics. It's just like, lunch.
You can't get there from there. You can't, I mean, you cannot go from a depressed state to feeling good all of a sudden. It doesn't work like that.
No, people will just be like, you just need to feel good. Well, that's the cookie analogy that your parents would give you when you were young. Oh, you're crying, here's a cookie. Unfortunately, that teaches you not to deal with your pain. Which is, there's nothing wrong with the pain. It's a natural part of life. There's nothing wrong with anxiety or fear or doubt or any of it, because on the other side of it is your courage and your happiness. So one gives you access to the other. And like one of my favorite quotes is from Carl Jung, who said, "The brighter the light, the darker the shadow." So it is about allowing your light to come out, but also learning how to work with the shadow. And that is, he actually developed something called shadow work, which is, in meditation, you sit down, you actually go to the deep, painful places that you've been avoiding, and bring compassion and bring love and bring healing to that spot. as if you're taking care of yourself, self-parenting almost. And this is something that I engage in frequently, which is you offer yourself that compassion or that love to those wounds, because like I said, we all have the wounds, but that's only a piece of who you are. Just because you've been hurt in the past doesn't mean you're broken. Right. It's not all of you. It's just a scar on your skin in a world full of, you have a whole lot full of other experiences outside of that one wound.
I love that. I love the idea of giving yourself what you need, instead of seeking it from the people around you or from other substances or whatever that fills you up. Going within and doing the work and giving yourself that compassion or that attention or that love that you need and that you crave from other people.
How are you expecting to love somebody to death to your maximum capacity if you can't even love who you are?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is not like a Justin Bieber song remix, because it's totally BS. But that was more like a jab at her. But I'm just going honestly, if you can't you can only really, and I truly believe this, love somebody as much as you are actually capable of loving yourself and who you are. Because how can you do something that you don't know how to do?
Right.
That's a good point.
Right?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
And it's loving, like you said, the dark sides of you. And I think that comes from understanding that once you go through the hard times, that's how you acquire all these skills and resilience and more self-love, So once you can change your perspective of a hard time or pain or tough stages of life and realize that you're getting something good out of them, I don't know, I think it changes everything. Instead of avoiding it, you can dive into it.
Yeah, exactly. I think you never really learn the lesson unless you let yourself feel through it.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you feel through something, finally, letting go of old patterns that I've had, I had to face that. I had to be okay, listen, I'm fed up with this. How can I learn the lesson? And you have to really step into your courage, and you have to be willing to feel like crap for a while. You have to be willing to get really real and ugly with the truth of it. Getting it all out, facing it. And then just choosing to move through that and not create the same patterns over and over and over again. So
I couldn't agree more. The first 3 years of my writing and the Better Man Project on my blog primarily, because Instagram and all the other stuff's relatively new, it was, how did I learn about love? Through being in some of the most unloving relationships. How did I learn about passion? By being completely dispassionate about everything. And how did I learn about never quitting? Wow, by actually really giving up. So it's interesting. I think that exactly what I've been trying to do, which is taking these awful experiences in many, many different ways and going, what can I pull from this? Maybe it's not all positive, but what can you learn? It's it's very overused in terms of you gotta learn from the bad times, but it really is true if you do it in an authentic way.
Right.
Which is going oh man, maybe I shouldn't have dated them, or that's not good for me, or I can't do that in the future, or maybe the drinking is actually getting too much. Right? And understanding kind of that intuitive heart feel, that little softer voice inside going you gotta slow down. Or you gotta do this, or you gotta speed up. And being willing to go and make changes within your life, which are kind of difficult to do, but to be willing to do that.
Right.
When you do find that courage, nothing is better. Nothing is better. And it might be hard in that moment to move past that. But it's once you do move past that, and it's true, what's that quote? Turn your wounds into wisdom, turn your pain into passion. Especially working with clients and explaining that whole concept. Yes, it can be difficult. Yes, it can be hard. Yes, being in that low place with it doesn't feel good. But what's on the other side is something beyond what you could even conceive to be possible. And so it's just making sure that you understand. It's you're going to come out on the other side and you're going to feel 10 times better than you felt before that experience. So
yeah, there is an inherent fear of kind of this darker side of us, which we all have. You might as well embrace it, because it's going to keep on chasing you if you don't. And it's like, wow, I am really angry about this. It was like one of the challenges that I had from one of my coaches this year was, how can you capture and utilize this anger? Because my coach Ken goes, when's the last time you've been like royally pissed at somebody? And I'm like, and he goes, like, get out of my effing face or someone's gonna get hurt pissed. And like, I can't tell you. And he's like, I want you to start to learn how to harness the anger, not direct it out on somebody else and not direct it in on yourself, but to harness that and to have that pass through a filter and create with that. And I think, there are certain things that happen in life that we can get really upset about and really angry about. I mean, bullying is absolutely something that exists in this world. Racism, discrimination, and these things they're awful things, but they're also things that can help drive people to some heights of actually wanting to stand as an example of what's possible in the world. And I think when you have access to the light, that's wonderful. But when you can take this darkness and it doesn't burn as clean as kind of the things in the light, it's like I call it having black smoke in the sky. And like, I have a couple of friends that know, like, they're like, how's your day going? I'm like, oh, we're burning the black smoke today. They know that I'm taking some of this bad stuff from the past and just burning it and like using that to continue pushing forward. Because a lot of us have a mission or a vision of wanting to make positive ripples in the world. So I don't think it's necessarily something that you have to shy away from, of using that type of the stuff that really has hurt you in the past and use it as fuel.
I love that.
Yeah, everyone has an ego. That's fine. It's just, it's okay to use that from time to time. But you also do have a deeper sense of self beyond that. But if you can access that and start pushing yourself forward and you're really down and out, who's to say that's a bad thing?
Yeah. Great.
Right?
Great. So how has this awareness changed your life?
Oof. I think there's different levels. I think currently, understanding, hey, this vibe doesn't really fit with you. Maybe you should start traveling somewhere else, or this sense of intuition of like this calling to engage in a practice of surfing. Mm-hmm. Like, what does that mean? It's like the essence of fluidity, right? And being in nature. And so I think the awareness part is really being like a couple of different ways of being self-aware throughout the day of like, okay, how did this go? Mm-hmm. I've always felt like I've been pretty aware, but like now after this year of actually being trained in some of these things, I'm going, okay, like, what happened here? Like really looking at kind of like a friendship or an event that had happened and being like, kind of rethinking through it and understanding, not beating yourself up, but really understanding, okay, this is kind of like how I acted or what happened here. So an awareness that has existed throughout the day-to-day as well, which is like, how am I feeling today? But also being able to observe yourself in a moment, which is going, can you shift on like a hairpin when you are like getting really triggered by something? Can you actually have that observation ability to be, okay, I got to settle myself, I got to ground myself, and I got to make a different move here in a moment. Mm-hmm. And I think it's another step past kind of the awareness aspect of kind of like looking back and reflecting, and really being like, in this moment, I gotta make a move.
Shift it.
Detach from it and take a step back.
And I just think the awareness aspect of it makes you more of a contributor in your life than someone who's just a reflex. Mm-hmm. And I've lived that life where I've just been like a reaction to everything.
Sure.
Personally, my story in terms of what I was offered as a narrative from my own coach was, and this is literally throughout this past year, is they gave me the story of the marionette, which is, like the guy who's like playing this doll with all these strings. And the story of the marionette is basically someone that puts on this show for all of these people to be kind of like nice and liked, and it's not very authentic though. And so he gave me another story, the transferring story of a war painter, which is somebody that goes into this battleground, right? And they start painting these beautiful pictures, these like wartime pictures of what's going on in this world. And he goes, how can you take like a darkness, or how can you take everything that's going on and let that pass through your filter and turn it into something positive? What happened here, like really looking at kind of like a friendship or an event that had happened and being like kind of rethinking through it and understanding, not beating yourself up, but really understanding, okay, this is kind of like how I acted or what happened here. So an awareness that has existed throughout the day-to-day as well, which is like, how am I feeling today? But also being able to observe yourself in a moment. Which is going, can you shift on like a hairpin when you are like getting really triggered by something? Can you actually have that observation ability to be, okay, I got to settle myself, I got to ground myself, and I got to make a different move here in a moment. And I think it's another step past kind of the awareness aspect of kind of like looking back and reflecting, and really being like, in this moment, I gotta make a move.
Shift it.
Detach from it. And take a step back.
And I just think the awareness aspect of it makes you more of a contributor in your life than someone who's just a reflex. And I've lived that life where I've just been like a reaction to everything.
Sure.
Personally, my story in terms of what I was offered as a narrative from my own coach was, and this is literally throughout this past year, is they gave me the story of the marionette, which is, you know, like the guy who's like playing this doll with all these strings. And the story of the marionette is basically someone that puts on this show for all of these people to be kind of like nice and liked, and it's not very authentic though. And so he gave me another story, the transferring story of a war painter, which is somebody that goes into this battleground, right? And they start painting these beautiful pictures, these like wartime pictures of what's going on in this world. And he goes, how can you take like a darkness, or how can you take everything that's going on and let that pass through your filter and turn it into something positive?
Very cool.
I think there's this awareness aspect.
Can we pause really quick? We'll pause the video and cut this out. My laptop is about to die.
Hold on.
Poor
She was
planning.
like trying to
I'm
sneakishly like get the
And then
plug.
I realized I can't sneak and do this the right way. So
Yeah, okay.
sorry.
No worries.
It had a full charge. We're just chatting away.
Yeah, and thanks for spending time with us. It's, very nice.
Of course.
Yeah, we'll just cut this little womp womp part out. How can I put it?
I like the idea. Oh, do you need help?
No, I got it.
Got it. It sounds like your coach, and I'm interested because I haven't really heard this concept, but like the idea of different like stories and roles, like the, like what you're saying about like the marionette, and then what was the second one? The war
painter.
It's cool. So there's like a whole set, I guess, of like roles.
I mean, the awesome thing about having a narrative-based type of coaching is you create the narrative as you sit in front of the person. It just comes to you. So I've created probably about 100 different narratives, and the main structure is the story, the narrative. Who is this person in the world? How do they show up? Who are they to others? And, how is this current way of being, if it's an old narrative, constricting their gift? Which is, some people might have this like huge sense of courage that's being covered up, right? So how do you kind of like build a program about letting this sense of vulnerability or courage or whatever it is actually come out? So it's a really cool aspect to the coaching.
Cool.
That I really enjoy.
Love it.
Yeah.
Do you have any more questions? Anything else you want to share with us or our audience about you?
Whoa. I don't know. I'm much better at Q&A than...
Yeah. I know. I'm the same way.
What's your passion? What lights you up? What keeps you up at night saying like, I'm so excited about this?
I've actually been going through a really interesting transition period right now, where I'm starting to rediscover what that actually is for me.
Yeah.
The previous period that I can actually speak of is, I still am, but very much into fitness and understanding. I had this dream I had this moment when I was 11 years old. I was in my grandfather's room in Maryland, and I looked on a TV and I saw this guy on TV who was like ripped, right? And I was just like, instantaneously, I'll never forget it. I was like, I really want to do that. Really bad. I remember I'm 11, I'm doing push-ups and like sit-ups in my grandfather's bedroom, like in front of this TV. And I didn't understand why at that time. I was too young to even get it. And as the years had gone on, this was continued to be in my head of this vision that I had back when I was 11 and this look that I wanted to achieve somewhere in the future. And probably when I was 11 years old, it was out of vanity. And as I continued, I lost baseball, and I was in a gym a few days after that. And the gym became my outlet for all of these very confusing different feelings that are surrounding having lost a sport due to physical injury and something that you had wanted to do for your entire life. And so the gym actually just became an outlet for my life. Felt like chaos, but that was the one thing that I could actually put effort in, get effort out. So I continued driving towards this goal, and God knows how many times failed doing it. My best friend and I always laugh about this. I was like, do you remember how many times I'd be like, all right, like this is it, like this 3-4 month stint, and then I'd somewhere get in like 2 months and fail. And so I came out of Los Angeles just in like the worst shape I've ever been in because I was in such a stressful situation down there, and that's like a whole nother story. But I just felt awful about my life, and I came back home, and I, after having struggled with eating issues for years and actually doing this, I was like, this is your last shot to actually try. And I for 100 days I knocked it out of the park, and I was like, okay, I'm on a roll. Now I feel like I'm going to get there. And, I found a trainer who was incredible, who believed in my story and like what I was going through. We did 4 months of grueling work, and I got to another photo shoot, and I was like, this is good, but it's not, it still needs to have more work done. And it became more and more about this grand pursuit of a dream, which stood for overcoming not just what I had, what was going on within the fitness realm of my life, but overcoming this this other path that I could have taken. And this was a consuming passion of mine. And I stepped into that moment, and it was everything that I thought and more. And that was this moment that lasted from 11 years old to 26. So after I've traveled over here, I've kind of been, over the past couple of months, really rediscovering that question of, okay, what's next? Because I don't have the same drive to do the fitness stuff, because it doesn't have that same story to it for me anymore. This is a huge part of my life. Absolutely, I love going to the gym and working out, and it still will always mean a lot to me. But I'm kind of going like, what's next? And I've had that pull for, you got to get into the water and see what this is all about. It's an exciting pull, so that's why I'm excited to go to Portugal for the next few months and surf up and down the coast and see what all that is about. But it's a rediscovering, and I think we do have different dreams as time goes on, and things change. So I think that's kind of like the long-winded answer to your question.
No, that's awesome. And I think we continue to grow, we continue to expand, we continue to have different dreams. And we talk about this all the time. 5 years ago, I would have never guessed that this is what I would want to do with my life. Really never. It's just like coming from that place, and we both obviously are coaches for a reason. We've both been through our own stuff, like in our own life, that has inspired us to change. So it's just amazing. What keeps like at least me up at night is even just wondering what that will be. Like what will I be inspired to feel or do or think next? Like that in itself is like anticipation and an excitement. But I think you're right. It changes as we move through different situations.
I think that's exciting. I love that.
So exciting.
And I think that there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I think, I don't know if other people have gone through this, but I think earlier in my life, like once, and it doesn't just apply to like a passion. Maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's a job, but like you outgrow things and you go in a new direction. And I think it freaks a lot of people out because they've attached their identity to that passion or that relationship. But I think as we grow, you go in new directions. And if you approach it from, not that something's wrong with you or that you're not about that anymore. Oh, we lost you, but we're back. Can you see us?
Yeah.
Okay. Take it as like an adventure, like what is going to be my next passion? What's my next focus? And like riding that wave. And I think it changes the experience of it.
Yeah, just kind of like allowing it to ease into your life instead of like going and hunting for it.
Yeah.
Letting it find you kind of thing.
Yeah, that magical about patience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. We're so excited to, again, just have you here and to just chat with you. We love having these insightful chats with people. I think it just like expands our minds and I don't know, it's pretty badass.
It was perfect. You said so many things that are like so on point with what we believe and what we included in our course, but so many new things. I feel like I learned so many different ways of looking at things and different practices. So it was super interesting.
Really cool.
The conversation takes so long forever.
It's going all day.
I know.
I agree. I completely agree. And I feel like that's another reason why we like to meet and reach out to people, because I think it's so important to surround yourself with people that are like-minded and that have like this same mentality and are willing to grow.
And who encourage your growth, and who support your growth and like cheer you on with it. I think it's great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So where can people find more about you?
So you can find my website, the Better Man Project with an S, .com. You can find me on Instagram at the Better Man Project, on Twitter at the Better Man Project or something like that. Better Man Proj. And over on Facebook at the Better Man Project as well.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'll link all your stuff so they can find you. Get some more Evan.
Perfect.
We'll blast you out. Well, cool. Well, thank you again for your time, and we'll keep you posted on this video and everything. We'll send you the link so that you can have it for you.
Time goes on, and things change. So I think that's kind of like the long-winded answer to your question.
No, that's awesome. And I think like we continue to grow, we continue to expand, we continue to have different dreams. And we talk about this all the time. 5 years ago, I would have never guessed that this is what I would want to do with my life. Really never. It's just like coming from that place, and we both obviously are coaches for a reason. We've both been through our own stuff, like in our own life, that has inspired us to change. So it's just amazing. What keeps like at least me up at night is even just wondering what that will be. Like what will I be inspired to feel or do or think next? Like that in itself is like anticipation and an excitement. But I think you're right. It changes as we move through different situations.
I think that's exciting. I love that.
So exciting.
And I think that there's nothing wrong with that. Like I think I don't know if other people have gone through this, but I think earlier in my life, like once, and it doesn't just apply to like a passion. Maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's a job, but like you outgrow things and you go in a new direction. And I think it freaks a lot of people out because they've attached their identity to that passion or that relationship. But I think as we grow, you go in new directions. And if you approach it from, not that something's wrong with you or that you're not about that anymore. Oh, we lost you, but we're back. Can you see us?
Yeah.
Okay. Take it as like an adventure, like what is going to be my next passion? What's my next focus? And like riding that wave. And I think it changes the experience of it.
Yeah, just kind of like allowing it to ease into your life instead of like going and hunting for it.
Yeah.
Letting it find you, kind of thing.
Yeah, that magical about patience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. We're so excited to, again, just have you here and to just chat with you. We love having these insightful chats with people. I think it just like expands our minds and I don't know, it's pretty badass.
It was perfect. You said so many things that are like so on point with what we believe and what we included in our course, but so many new things. I feel like I learned so many different ways of looking at things and different practices. So it was super interesting.
Really cool.
The conversations that could go on forever.
All day.
I know.
I agree. I completely agree. And I feel like that's another reason why we like to meet and reach out to people, because I think it's so important to surround yourself with people that are like-minded and that have like this same mentality and are willing to grow.
And who encourage your growth, you know, and who support your growth and like cheer you on with it. I think it's great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So where can people find more about you?
So you can find my website, the Better Man Project with an S, .com. You can find me on Instagram at the Better Man Project, on Twitter at the Better Man Project or something like that. Better Man Proj. And over on Facebook at the Better Man Project as well.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'll link all your stuff so they can find you. Get some more